As always, I want to start off by explaining that I understand these are two completely different classes of knives, but people have asked me to compare the Victorinox knives to higher-end knives so they can make a decision on which one to purchase and if it's worth the extra money. So that's what I'm doing right now. Shun Premier 4-inch paring knife, Victorinox Fibrox 3¼ inch paring knife. Both are not serrated at all. Let's go into the similarities. The similarities are that they're both knives, that they are both sharp, and that's pretty much the last similarity they have, besides the fact that they both have similar cutting angles. 16 degrees, 15 degrees, the difference isn't really that big. This is technically a little bit sharper. Now let's go into the differences. Number one, this is a stamped knife made by machine. This is a forged knife made by hand. Number two, this is a full tang going all the way down, which means there's no pivot point while you're cutting. Or actually, it's a paring knife, so while you're cutting, it makes no difference for a paring knife, but still. But this, a lot of people don't realize, Victorinox knives are not full tang. The tang ends about right here, and the handle is formed over the actual knife. So there is a pivot point. Number one, you should never be using a paring knife to cut on a board. You should always use it in your knuckles like this and push food into it. But with their other knives, it's important to remember that there is not a full tang. Chef's knives, knives like that, they're actually using on a cutting board that you're using to, let's say, cut a melon or something. There's a chance that blade, if you're abusing it, is going to fly in your face. You shouldn't be abusing a knife in the first place, though. After that, let's discuss the quality of the steel. The Shun Premier uses VG10 steel, which is the gold standard of steels for knives. This does not. The end result is this is a 58 hardness. This is a 61 hardness, roughly. Benefits to both. Let's talk about the benefits for the 61 hardness. 61 hardness, the benefit is that since it is harder, it's much more resilient to being bent as you're cutting with it, which happens naturally as you're cutting. What that means is you can go much longer in between times you need to hone and sharpen. There's a second problem though, opposite side of that coin is that since it's harder and since it does not bend the way that a softer steel would, the energy needs to be dissipated somehow. So if you're abusing the knives, what's going to happen is you're going to end up with little microchips, and you're probably going to hear about that if you're talking about Shuns. That's sort of a moot point. It doesn't really matter if you're not abusing your knives, so who really cares? Next difference is that since this is stamped out of a single sheet of steel, it is a single piece of steel. The Shun Premier is not a single piece of steel. It's a VG10 that's then clad in 32 layers of steel that is pretty much a stainless steel, which leads to a couple of things. Number one, it leads to that gorgeous Damascus pattern you see on the bottom half of the knife. And number two, it makes it extremely, extremely resistant to pitting, staining, rusting, things like that. Next difference, Pack-A-Wood handle, Fibrox handle. Pretty self-explanatory. Steel end cap, sure you can see it. No end cap, pretty self-explanatory. This is again a Premier knife. The next difference that you can very, very obviously see, this has the hammered finish right there. This knife does not have a hammered finish, very, very obvious. That helps you from stopping things sticking to the knife. If you've ever been cutting a tomato, if you've ever been cutting garlic especially, and you are cutting and you realize nothing's falling on the other side of the knife, and you turn your knife over and there's just garlic and stuff stuck to the side of your knife, that's what you've experienced. These little things create air pockets, which stops vacuums from happening, which stops things from sticking to your knife. Final and very important difference. Both of these knives have lifetime warranties. Both are made in great places, Switzerland, Japan, solid knives. All Shun knives, however, come with lifetime free sharpening, which, comparing these two knives, yes, it gets rid of a little bit of the price difference because knives, if you're getting them sharpened at a reputable place, are going to cost you about $5 an inch to sharpen. So a 4-inch paring knife like this is going to be $20 to sharpen. A 3¼ inch knife like this is going to be a little bit over what? Maybe $18 to sharpen. It adds up very quickly. Now, this knife, if you want a piece of jewelry for your kitchen that also cuts very, very well, and you want a premier set of knives, a premium set of knives, the Shun Premier are phenomenal. If you want a workhorse, if you want something that's a bit more budget conscious, I would suggest the Fibrox set if you work in a place where you're really, really abusing your knives. Essentially, I would suggest it if you are a chef at a kitchen of a restaurant. You throw knives into sinks, you throw knives into dishwashers, you are rushing to cut things, etc., etc. If you aren't doing that, I would highly suggest that you look at the Shun Sora line, because once you consider free sharpening, the price difference is pretty moot. But with the Shun Sora, you get a handmade forged knife made of VG10 steel that's clad in stainless steel that has a full tang, blah, 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 and it still looks like a piece of art. Buy once, cry once, that's sort of my main motto. But I totally understand if someone wants to get this knife because they're going to be abusing their knives, etc. So I'm going to put links down below. If you have any questions, comments, or concerns, let me know. But otherwise, I'll talk to you very soon.